Hello fighters, and welcome back to another video. We've got something a little bit special today. I've just recently, the other day, come back from playing in the Gundam TCG Beta event. So I recorded both the box opening as well as a couple games, which I'll have playing in the background of the video today. But essentially, I just wanted to take a moment to kind of talk a little bit about what the beta was, a bit about the Gundam TCG itself, and kind of what my thoughts on the game were after being able to get my hands on some of the cards and play some games with it. So, first of all, what is the Gundam TCG? So, this is a new card game coming out by Bandai, the same company that has created both the Digimon TCG, the Dragon Ball TCG, as well as the One Piece TCG. So quite a couple kind of big names in the industry at the moment. So they have taken on Gundam as their next card game project. Bandai does also, as far as I know, pretty much own the rights of Gundam. Bandai does put out all of the Gundam plastic models and things like that I've always been a big fan of. So they've got a lot of kind of creative freedom with the IP to kind of do what they want to with it. So the beta event ran in early February. Mine was on the 2nd, I believe, on the most recent Sunday, but I know there were some around that time, not all on that exact date. The official release for the card game in full is in July, with our 4 starter decks releasing on July 11th, and the first booster set New Type Rising releasing on July 25th. Set 1's going to feature characters and units and everything like that from the original Mobile Suit Gundam series, the Wing, Seed, Unicorn, and Witch from Mercury series as well. So a lot of really popular series there. I'm a really big fan of Witch from Mercury. I certainly don't mind Wing Gundam, Unicorn Gundam, and the original, and a pretty big fan of Seed as well. I would say that's kind of my guilty pleasure. I know it's not particularly one of the more popular series, but I've always loved it. So we had those both in the beta. We'll have those in our starter kits, and of course we'll have more expanded cards in set 1. So in terms of the beta itself and kind of what the beta kit entails, so it was kind of like a bit of a sneak peek event for the game, essentially. So it features cards from both the starter deck and set 1, so there's no cards that are, to my knowledge at least, beta edition kind of exclusive. The cards do have a little beta stamp in the top right corner. As far as I know, the art is still going to be the same, and it does have set codes for set 1 and the different starter decks as well. It came with 16 boosters, each with 9 cards. So that was really nice, being able to crack packs, as you'll see me doing in the background at the moment. Comes with 1 guaranteed legend rare, so you would have seen at the very beginning when I first opened the pack. It came on its own kind of in a separate pack on a slip of paper, and I got the Wing Gundam for mine. It comes with a full card set as well of about 56 cards, so this was just a lot of commons and uncommons, about 2 of each that were in that set, as well as 6 really nice like damage counter dice, but essentially they're just d6s. They're set up as any other d6. The dice themselves are really pretty. I will most likely actually be using them myself for things like D&D and everything like that as well. Big fan of those, but essentially you got your kit. You would crack open your pack, see how you went, construct a deck or 2, and then just kind of jam some casual games. So it wasn't like an official event. There wasn't necessarily prizing. There was a promo to be given out once everyone had a chance to play the game and leave some feedback through the Bandai TCG Plus app. But it wasn't necessarily, there was no winners promo. If you won games, you didn't get more or anything like that. It was really just an opportunity to actually get hands-on with the game and actually try it out. So in terms of my beta pulls, again, they're kind of going on in the background. It did pretty well. I definitely would have liked to have gotten one more aerial if I could have, but that's okay. I'll settle for the one that I got. I've got a pretty sizable pre-order for set 1 in the starter deck, so I'm sure I'll get what I want. Namely, wanting that Suletta and the aerial alt arts that they've shown so far. I'll flash them up in the screen and post. They are very pretty cards. All of the alt arts that they've kind of unveiled for the game so far are gorgeous. For the beta kit, there seems to have been a rate of about 1 in 4 beta kits would have an alternate art in their packs. I'd heard that from people that had gone to other events, and that seemed to hold true in mine as well, with one case of the beta having 8 beta kits, and 2 people managed to get some alt arts from our ones, and unfortunately not myself included, but that's okay. That's what set 1 will be for. And there was actually a very rare chance for you to pull a pack of foil resource cards. Now, the resource cards are essentially, I'll get into that when we into it in more detail once we start talking about the game itself, but they are essentially like your mana or your memory or whatever kind of resource you would like to use it for this game. You spend it to play cards. Most of them came with 20 resource cards. You'll use 10 in your deck, because you have a maximum of 10. Beta kit was essentially, it seems to be kind of set up to be able to make 2 constructed decks and then play with those. But there was a chance for your resource cards to be fully foiled, and one of the people in our group actually did get that, and it was really nice to see Bandai kind of went all out with it. It wasn't just the same resource card, but with a slight shimmery foil, like just a regular rare. The colors on it were actually slightly different. It had texture. It was like it almost felt like an alternate art resource, basically. They were very, very pretty. And they kind of went all out with it. You didn't just get one. Every single one of the 20 basic resources that you got in that beta kit were textured foil. So that was really nice to see. Unfortunately, I didn't get them myself, but that's okay. Now, it seems that you got about 3 legends across your 16 packs. I'm not sure how everyone else went, but I got at least one of each. So as you would have seen from the pulls, I got my Wing Gundam legend on top. I got an additional Wing Gundam, as well as 1 Airstrike and 1 regular classic Gundam, I guess you'd call it. The card design as well, just the general layouts of the card, I think are really quite pretty. They have the art on them is really nice, especially the legends. I think they look incredible. And the just very, very border of the card is essentially what dictates what color they're from. We're going to be launching with 4 colors. We only got 3 in the beta. I'll talk a little bit about those later on. But essentially you've got your top left where it'll have the level and cost of the card. It'll have on the very left showing whether it's a unit or a pilot or what type of card. And then the text on the bottom as well. And that's where they'll generally have the little bits of color to indicate what color the card is from. It's a really clean design, it looks good, it's simple, it's straightforward, it does what you need it to do, while also still looking good. Now, I can see you looking up, because I haven't in a moment while I'm reading off of what I wanted to go over. We have gone into the game now, so we've got a little bit of gameplay going on. I think this does a really good kind of job of showing the flow of the game, essentially. So as for the game itself, and my thoughts on that, I really like the resource and level system. I think it's really, really interesting. So the resources in the game essentially act kind of like Hearthstone or One Piece with your mana or your Don, where it's in a separate deck. You'll flip over 1 additional one per turn, and then that's what you have access to. Your level, however, is essentially equal to the maximum amount of resources that you have. So say you're on turn 4, you've now flipped over a total of 4 resource cards, as my opponent at the moment on the left has at the moment. She has 4 resource cards, and that indicates that she is at level 4. Now, a card has a level requirement, meaning that you can't play the card until you have that level, as well as an associated cost. So, for example, I'm looking in front of me at the moment at the Wing Gundam that has a level 6 requirement, but only a 4 cost. So I need to have a total of 4 resource cards to be able to play the card. However, I only need to tap or spend 4 of those resources to actually play it. I think this is a really interesting system. I think it allows for a lot of really interesting card design, especially later on in the game's life. Kind of best thing I can think of is potentially we'll have a deck that wants to kind of build up and then rush out opponents at the very end, where all of its cards are quite powerful and have a lot of really good effects and are very cheap, but they have a high level requirement. So while you're not paying much to play them, you still can't be playing them until later on in the game. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for kind of design within that space. The win condition is essentially, at the moment, you know, we're only in set 1, or barely in set 1, since we only have the beta. The win condition is to take out all of your opponent's shields, which you can see put myself on the bottom of the screen on the right, or as well as my opponent. We've both got ours at the bottom of the screen. You start the game with 6 shields. Goal is to destroy those 6 shields and then hit your opponent with a direct attack. Nice and simple, very, very similar. Anyone that's played One Piece and Digimon is going to recognize this. Flipping over the cards has similar things, such as security effects in Digimon, or I'm not quite sure what they're called in One Piece, but I know some cards have essentially effects once they are flipped out from your damage or your life. So it's a very familiar, very intuitive life system. And as you'll see on our lives, one of my absolute favorite new mechanics for this game is the addition of bases. Now you can see that these bases, they're not in our kind of combat area. At the moment I still have what's called the EX base, which is kind of like a very basic base with no effects and 3 health that each player starts with. My opponent there, I've just destroyed hers, but she had played an actual card base, the Falmel, which is a bit stronger, it has an actual effect, and so on and so forth. And essentially what these bases do is they sit in front of your shields, and your opponent is unable to damage your shields and flip any shields until they have taken out your base. I think this is absolutely brilliant. It's easily one of my favorite additions to the game. I think it is going to be really effective in kind of discouraging card design based around OTK. While OTK can be really fun, at the end of the day it can be a bit kind of, I suppose, toxic to play against as well. So I think it's a really good step in the right direction, having a bit of defensive play right out from the get-go. It's really, really cool. The bases have really interesting effects. For example, the Falmel that my opponent had out at the start there creates Zaku tokens. There's one in blue that will create tokens based on how many units you have out on the field. And one of my favorites being the Archangel in white, which allows you to pay 2 once per turn and restand one of your units with blocker. So essentially what that means is that you can attack with your blocking units, for example the Ailstrike Gundam, and then pay 2 and restand it. It does state that it can't attack for the rest of the turn, but what that means is that you're able to attack and then have it restood to be able to block the next turn, which is really, really cool. I like it a lot. Now, as for the colors and identities, we will be launching the game in July with green, white, blue, and red. Currently, the beta only has white, green, and blue. So as for the kind of identities and kind of what they do, this is kind of just my opinions. I might not be 100%, but essentially we've got our white, which is for, it has a lot of blockers and a lot of commands. So commands are kind of like, some are instant speed, some are not, but essentially spells or instants or orders, if you're more familiar with the Vanguard side of things. We've got green, which has a lot of ramp. It builds up EX resources, which I just realized I forgot to go over. I'll cover that in a moment. As well as breach, which is so far quite a powerful keyword I found. It essentially means that if your unit with breach attacks and destroys an opposing unit, it will still pierce and do damage through to your opponent's shields. Now, in terms of ramp, as mentioned, I'll just loop back to what's called the EX resource. Anyone that's played Hearthstone will recognize this mechanic as the coin. Essentially just means going second, you will have an additional one-use resource. What's really interesting about the EX resource is that it counts towards your level. So I believe it's already happened in this game at this point, but what I was able to do was play the Wing Gundam, which is a level 6 card, on turn 5 because of the fact that I had the EX resource and it was contributing to my total level. Once I used it, it went away and my level went back down to 5, but I was able to play that Wing Gundam essentially a turn earlier to be able to. So it's a great get-ahead mechanic for the going second player. I think there's a lot of incentive to hold on to it and then save it for a really impactful moment, namely playing down the Wing Gundam and putting the pilot hero underneath. So green has a couple ways as well of generating additional EX resources. For example, the Wing Gundam Bird mode is able to just on play place an EX resource. They also have a command card that if it comes out of your shields, its burst effect, it's called, will actually place an EX resource. But if you play it on your turn, it will just generate a rested resource from the resource deck. So green has a couple of those ways of kind of speeding up your gameplay and getting ahead and then blasting through your opponent's units and still being able to deal damage. Lastly, then we have blue. This seems to have a lot of kind of draw value and kind of card filtering, as well as a decent bit of what's called repair, which is essentially on your end step, you're able to heal your unit's damage, because damage actually does persist between rounds in Gundam, which I think is really interesting. Because it makes really big, really scary units. For example, again, the Wing Gundam. I'm going to keep looping back to this one because at the moment I think it is quite a powerful unit. Once it is paired with Hero, its like intended pilot, it is a very big, very scary unit. Paired with Hero, I believe it is a 7/7 unit with Breach 5, which will take out basically any base that we are aware of at the moment. And is actually able to attack active or stood enemy units as long as they are level 4 or lower. So normally you're only able to attack rested units, or Wing Gundam being able to attack their more valuable or something like that kind of blockers or other types of units and then still pierce through is quite powerful. But because of the fact that damage persists, and it's like magic in the fact that when you attack an enemy unit, you still take damage back as well. Damage is dealt all at the same time. So because of the fact that it persists, it can make dealing with larger, more scary units a lot more kind of doable, essentially. You're not going to get it in one hit necessarily, but it's going to be a lot more manageable than if its health was refreshing at the end of every round, for example, in Magic. We do not have red yet in the game, as I mentioned, but it has been described as basically having direct unit damage, so I think we're going to start seeing a lot more interesting removal options in red, as well as, again, as it mentions, they're just direct unit removal, so whether that be, you know, when attacking, or maybe when they come out, or when they pair, or something like that, they're able to deal direct damage to the enemy units. That's going to be really interesting to see once we do get the starter decks and set 1 reveals. As for the decks I played, I did play a couple at the event. I had the most kind of enjoyment out of a green-white deck using the Wing and the Aerial. So essentially, the game plan was to be ramping up to be able to play my Wing Gundam, to, well, get it out early, start blasting through shields and everything, using command cards to kind of control the board state and keep my things around, and then if I drew into Aerial, which again I only unfortunately got one of the main one, it gets a lot cheaper to play the more command cards that you have in your kind of drop zone, I guess you would call it, or your trash. So that's what I played there. In terms of commands, they're really interesting. They're really good interaction, but they also tend to do things on your turn only. So we've got a good mix of, I suppose, to use a magic equivalent, instant speed and sorcery, things on your turn as well as on your opponent's. Now, it's similar to Battle Spirits in the fact that it basically takes place during an action step. So the action step will essentially come into effect at 2 times during a turn. First will be whenever you or your opponent attacks. It'll essentially proceed as declaring the attack, the opponent having the opportunity to declare any blockers, and then you'll proceed to an action step. So the opponent will have the opportunity to play a command card that has action speed on it. It will say on the card action, basically. They'll do that. I believe you then have opportunity to respond with another action step card, and so on and so forth until there's no more effects. Damage will proceed from there. The second time will be during the end phase of a turn. So just before it proceeds to the next player's turn, either player will have the opportunity to play an action step card at that point as well. A lot of the removal at the moment, both between command cards and between unit cards, is a lot of bounce. There's not really any direct damage, but again, as Bandai have said, that's really going to be Red's focus, essentially. So we'll see most likely a lot more of effects like that, damage-based removal as well as just damage in general, once we have a lot more red cards. It's not just bounce, so for example, blue has a little bit of healing. They have a command card that can heal their units, as well as there is a command card that's able to essentially negate damage that your units would take from units of a certain level or lower. There's also some aggressive options in terms of there's one command card, I believe, that is able to give one of your units breach. So again, that kind of green piercing archetype, which can be a bit interesting. In terms of just card types in general, I suppose I probably should have covered this a little bit earlier, but that's okay, we'll cover it now. You've got your unit cards, which are all of your mobile suits, your Gundams and otherwise. So those unit cards will be the ones that are, hitting the board, swinging out, actually dealing damage and trying to win you the game. You'll have your pilot cards, which are almost like inheriteds from Digimon, but they are essentially played directly under rather than the unit going over the top. But essentially, if a pilot's in the battle zone, they are under a Gundam, and they will give a sort of inherited effect to the mobile suit that they're paired to, as well as a kind of stat boost in terms of both their AP and HP, or attack power and health power. There is also what's called link units. Now, what link units means is that on all of the unit cards, or most unit cards, there will be a little spot at the bottom where it will name a specific character, a specific pilot, or in some cases, a specific trait. Now, if you pair a pilot of that matching name or matching trait, they will become what's called a link unit. Some cards and some pilots will have specific paired effects if they are linked rather than paired. So you've got your pairing, which is just putting a pilot with any unit, and your link, which is matching that specific name or trait, as well as they become, again, what is called a link unit, and link units have haste, so they are able to attack essentially the turn that they come out. So your big wing Gundam can be really, really scary when you hit turn 5 going second, and you've got 6 resource cards. With your EX resource, you're able to smack down your wing Gundam for 4, play hero, his pilot for 2, they will become a link unit. Wing Gundam becomes a very big, scary 7/7 unit that is able to attack straight away into your opponent's active units, as long as they're level 4 or lower, and then also breach through them. So yeah, the link units can kind of come out of nowhere, and you would have seen at the end of the first game, that's actually how I finished it off. I had attacked with both of my units, and then I was able to close it out using Aerial and linking it with Soletta. So it was able to attack straight away for game. We've also got command cards. As mentioned, these are essentially like the spells or the options. You've got both sorcery speed and instant speed ones. Interestingly enough, we actually have cards that are combinations between a pilot and a command. So it can be used from hand as either a pilot to be slotted under one of your units, or you can use it as a command card. For example, his name doesn't come to name at the moment. I think it's Troa. He is the Heavy Arms Gundam's pilot from Gundam Wing. He can either be used as a command to give one of your units breach for the turn, or he can be used as a pilot to just pop the Heavy Arms Gundam and turn it into a link unit, or any other, and just have it paired. Lastly then, we do have bases. I've gushed about bases already, but essentially those are those ones that will set up shop in front of your opponent's shields and sit there and soak up damage before your opponent's able to break any more shields. So that's essentially what we've got. In terms of just a few small things for the game that have come up after playing, you've got a maximum of 6 units on either side, which having 6 shields plus a base is really nice. Again, it just kind of goes against that OTK style. Now, in terms of if you do have a maxed out field, my understanding is that you do have the opportunity to, if you play something, you'll need to remove something from your field. So it's not like, for example, Shadowverse Evolve, where once you are maxed out on your field, essentially you can't play anything else until something's been removed. You do have the opportunity to essentially make room for it when you would go to play it. There's also a 10 card in hand maximum. I'm sure we'll probably see effects, probably in blue, that will give you no maximum hand size, but we'll see what happens with that. I didn't have any issues, neither did my opponents, during the beta of ever hitting the maximum hand size. The only bit where it becomes a little bit scary, I guess, is if you've already got a pretty stocked hand and you get multiple of your units bounced back to hand. because if they are paired with a pilot, both the pilot and the unit will come back to hand. So as a general rule of thumb, wherever the unit goes, the pilot goes with it. So if the pilot gets destroyed in battle, or for whatever reason, it will go to drop, and so will the pilot. If it gets bounced back to hand, the pilot will go with it, and I assume we're eventually going to have effects to return cards to the bottom of the deck as well. The pilot will go with it. So it's not like Digimon where it comes back with all of its sources, or it comes back on its own and then all of its sources get trashed. Pilot and unit will come back together. And yeah, look, I think that about does it. In terms of just overall thoughts, I know I've been talking a lot about the game itself and kind of putting opinions in here and there. I really like the game. I think the game is fantastic. I had a lot of fun playing it during the beta. I'm really, really excited to get my hands on a proper product in July. I will be purchasing a case. We have the starter decks coming out. We also have two types of starter decks, essentially. There's the normal ones, and then the what's called Assemble start decks. So Bandai is also coming out with a miniatures tabletop game for Gundam called Gundam Assemble. And essentially these Assemble starter decks will come with the same starter deck as the regular, but it will also come with 3 of the Gundam Assemble miniatures, which, you know, they've said, oh, you can put it on top of your token cards, which, yeah, sure, you can do that, but I just want some Gundam minis, man. I've done Gunpla for a really long time. I've recently gotten into painting miniatures for things like Warhammer and stuff like that. So, yeah, it's gonna be good to have some Gundam minis that I can paint as well. So I've got one of each of the starter decks, one of each of the Assemble starter decks, and a case pre-ordered. So rest assured that I'll be going in on this game. There will 100% be content for this game on the channel. Have no doubt about that. We'll be playing games. I'll probably have some kind of VOD of like opening up the case, which I'm planning to stream. But yeah, lots of content planned for the game. I'm very, very excited. I'm loving it so far. And I can't wait to play more. The game that is playing at the moment is just about done. So I'll just let that play out in the background. Hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you're just as excited for the game as I am. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.